I'm your host, Dr. M, and you're listening to Aligned You, a podcast to assist you to truly be aligned through your body, head, and heart so you can reach your full potential in your own unique way. Hey there, Aligned You listeners, Dr. M here, and welcome to this week's episode. This week, I'm excited. I'm excited because it's the second part of our consistency and rhythm series, and I think it's a really important topic today, which is how to get back on the beat. I don't know about you, but I certainly at times have been thrown off rhythm of all the awesome things I've had in place for my own self-care, well-being, and my wellness. And there's times in life where you get thrown out of that rhythm. So today I want to talk about some of the areas and things you can do to actually make sure that you're checking in and self-auditing how well your rhythm is actually functioning right now. I had an interesting experience today, actually, and I'm recording at a different time than I originally planned because of a little spanner getting thrown in the works today when I had originally planned to be recording. I mentioned it over the last few episodes. I've had to plan my life design a little bit differently of late because of some of the shifts and changes that have been happening within my system. And one of the things that I've had to do is actually allow myself more time. I'm finding just at the moment my system is taking a little bit longer to get onto the beat. And whether that's my brain getting going or me waking up, all the different various parts of my system are taking a little bit more time than what they once did. So I'm allowing for that. What I hadn't allowed for today was that I actually had an appointment with my GP to organize some blood tests to see what was happening with my hormones right now. And through our conversation, we figured out we also needed to check out what was happening with my heart at lunchtime. So I actually ended up having an ECG when I was meant to be recording this week's podcast. So I needed to allow myself some grace to actually push the time back a little bit. And we're going to talk about the difference between excuses and grace in just a moment. But through the shift in my lunchtime routine is it meant that rather than recording at the middle of the day, I'm actually recording in the evening tonight to make sure that the weekly rhythm and consistency of the Wednesday drop is maintained. But it's so interesting as we actually are creating rhythm in our life and the automations that we create in our life, it does create a beautiful rhythm. And I talk a lot about that when it comes to our healing rhythm particularly with my hands-on work, with my integrative chiropractic practice. I get to talk about Mitchell Road Chiropractic a lot. It's one of my happy places. If you're watching our new YouTube channel, you can see it behind me, is that when I'm talking to my clients about their healing rhythm and the rhythm of their spine and the vibration of their body and their system, is our bodies do heal to a rhythm. And that's why when we're first creating a healing rhythm, when people first start coming to see me, we have to create that rhythm. And when you're starting a song and you hear the actual beats getting going and you feel the momentum moving as things are getting quicker through a song, or that momentum of a piece of music is actually starting, it's very similar when we're actually creating a healing rhythm within your system, is we actually need to create that momentum. But there's lots of aspects of life where we can create momentum, not just in the healing journey that we create with the clients that come into our beautiful space, where we're actually realigning their spine so that their innate intelligence that can actually flow successfully through their system, is that it's so important that we've got their spine in the proper alignment so that rhythm and flow can move at its best and their body can stay on the best possible beat so that it can actually align and be able to integrate the various stresses that are coming into our system. But more about that in just a moment. I want to touch on the difference between giving yourself some grace and creating excuses. I gave myself some grace at lunchtime because I literally had electrodes on my chest to make sure I wasn't having a heart attack at lunchtime, which you'll be pleased to know, folks. I was not. Hence, I am back on the mic. I didn't think I was. My GP was beautiful and was just making sure that some of the symptoms I was describing was not having a huge impact. And for those of you who have been listening for a long time, know that in my early 20s, I actually had some heart issues. So this isn't a new thing. It's just something that from time to time, actually, I need to make sure that I'm checking in on, which again is something you hear me talking about a lot, is that when it comes to our health and our wellness, it's important not to be stupid about stuff. And I could keep ignoring some of the signs that were coming up, or I could go get them checked, which at lunchtime I went and got them checked and made sure that I didn't need to do anything more drastic. So I gave myself some grace at lunchtime. There's been times over the last, I would say, year that I've absolutely made excuses as to why I wasn't on the mic and why I wasn't recording. So having the self-awareness to know the difference is super important. I was having a chat with one of our beautiful clients earlier today, and they have been doing the 75 hard challenge, which some of you might have heard about. I'm not a huge proponent on it. I understand why people do it because it's a huge challenge. It's a bit like doing a marathon. Personally, I have no interest in doing it myself. I have the utmost admiration for people that want to take it on if it's the right timing for them, because they were telling me about how they'd got to day 68 or 69 and then they'd failed. And I went, what do you mean you failed? And they're actually starting a new business at the moment. They've got a whole lot going on in their world. And the conversation that we were having was, I said, you know what? I actually don't see it as being a failure. Give yourself some grace. Is that you've got so much going on in your world right now. Have you thrown out all of it? No. It was just a component of it that literally there were not enough hours in the day to complete it. So 75 hard is a challenge where it goes for 75 days. And there's all sorts of different components, like 2 45-minute workouts a day. There's certain nutrition plan that you should be following. There's reading every day. There's a series of different things that get done. I'm not going to go into the specifics of it, but it's a lot. And that creates some amazing habits and definitely can create some life-changing shifts within your system. But also, you need to have the amount of time literally in a day to be able to do it without then breaking down your body too fast. And so one of the conversations we were having around it was to look at, number one, of the success of doing it for 68, 69 days. And most importantly, what were the learns out of creating that consistency and rhythm? What were the things in life that they now want to take moving forward that are the big game changers that they know make a huge difference in how their whole day, week, month, year actually pans out? Having a conversation with a new client this evening around how to be looking after themselves with the consistency and rhythm they have around their physical training. They're training in a particular sort of workout. It's quite stressful on their system, but they love it. So that's super cool. If you love it, that's awesome. What do you need to do to create the support so you're able to actually maintain that consistency and rhythm? Because if you're training like a professional athlete would in terms of the amount of hours that you're putting in, then you actually need to look after your system as a professional athlete would, which they would have a team around them to make sure that their system is actually recovering quick enough, that they're actually recovering and their body and their muscles and their spine and their alignment is in the best possible position so that their recovery is as quick as possible before they start doing it all over again. And also having the awareness of whether the discomforts that are actually coming up within your system are discomforts that are actually aligned with the sort of training that you're doing. For example, muscle soreness. If you are trying to increase strength and you're pushing your system into a new zone, there is going to be soreness. That's actually what a lot of people are looking for in their training. But there's a difference between soreness and pain. And there's a difference between soreness because you're working a particular area to actually having pain and pain from injuries. I hope that makes sense, aligned you listeners. For some of you who are listening, you're like, oh my God, Dr. M, this is not my jam because I don't want to train that hard in the first place. And I'm pressed to actually have enough time in the day to go for a walk, let alone doing anything that hard. But I also know for a lot of you listening is that that sort of heavier workout and exercise is something you really love. And I'm a massive proponent for whatever you love doing is making the time, space, and also creating the energy to be able to keep doing that. And as I said, is to give yourself grace when there's times that it's important to give yourself grace and be aware of the difference between grace and excuses. I reckon I'll take having to push back the timing of this particular recording because I was having an ECG at lunchtime. And one of my gorgeous clients who came in earlier this afternoon, when she said, how are you? And I went, yeah, I'm good. I figured out I wasn't having a heart attack at lunchtime. And she said, well, I'm glad to hear that because that would have been next level commitment to be back here adjusting this afternoon. And we were having a good chuckle about it. Not sure my beautiful wife thinks it's so funny just yet, but I can see the humor in it because I actually made sure my baselines were okay. And I could actually push back the recording time to a little bit later after I saw my clients this afternoon and still be able to deliver on the consistency and rhythm. So that brings me to my next point, aligned you listeners, is to understand what your parameters are around what is your definition of consistency and rhythm in all aspects of your life design. I love getting to talk about life design on this platform. You guys hear me talking about it all the time. If you've been listening to me for a while, you know it's one of my favorite topics, because the reality is if you're not designing your life, somebody else is designing it for you. And some of you might think, oh yeah, that's all well and good, Dr. M, you get to set your own hours, etc. And it is, but that's part of my life design. It is all well and good for me, but there's aspects within everybody's life, regardless of what sort of work you do or circumstances at home, that you can actually be designing in the parameters that you find yourself in. Hope that makes sense. And within that is to be designing the parameters of what sort of rhythm and consistency you want to create, and what are your non-negotiables. What are the things throughout your week or for your month or your year that are your non-negotiables that you know are super important to keep your consistency and rhythm? I know for me right now, one of the things that I am not good at, and I have traditionally not been good at, and because of various circumstances, it seems to have gone back in the not good pile, is actually creating the rhythm of taking time away from work. Circumstances over the last few months have meant that I've needed to be hands-on in practice more than I had initially thought I was going to be this year, but also I've thoroughly enjoyed it. But it does mean it's just that little bit harder for me to take time away from work at the moment to reset, recharge, recalibrate. So what I'm looking at now is, okay, what does that look like down the track? Because I might not be able to do it right this second. And some of you might find yourself in that position, aligned to you listeners, where you're like, yeah, I know what my ideals are, but right now, because of circumstance, I can't actually lock and load that in place right now. So my suggestion to you is, if that's the position you find yourself in, a bit like me in holidays at the moment, it's a little ways off just yet. We've got over Christmas, New Year, there'll be a week off. We've decided, we've locked it in. But it's one of those things where that's still a couple of months away from where the time of this particular recording. But it gives me that beautiful light at the tunnel to go, that's when that will be happening. So what do I need to do in the meantime to make sure I'm giving myself little chunks of downtime so that I can have a brain vacay in between what is coming into a beautifully busy end of the year? Over the next few weeks, we've got our awesome Unio retreat, which is our brand new retreat that my dear friend Pauline Wen and I are launching, which is a 4-day retreat, all genders. And next week, the topic and the theme will be the sacred union of self and within relationships. Can't wait. It's going to be freaking awesome. Then there's different speaking gigs I've got around Australia. We're coming into a busy time of year in the practice. We were away for seminars. I'm away for speaking gigs. There's so much going on right now. Even to the point somebody reached out wanting to catch up for a networking coffee. And I said, this might sound crazy, but that will be the new year before I have time for that. So it's having in mind where the end goal is in terms of, for example, that holiday, and having an awareness of what needs to get put in place between now and then to make sure that I'm actually being able to keep that rhythm and consistency in the other areas of my life as best as possible. And as I was explaining to a new client this afternoon, is that because they were actually asking about what's the difference between a physiotherapist and a chiropractor. And then I was explaining that, which that perhaps is a topic for another time because some of you might still be wondering, but actually talking about how I look after myself from a consistency and rhythm point of view. And to share that with you, aligned you listeners, and for some of you, this will not be the right fit, but for me, it's how I look after myself. I actually have 2 different chiropractors. I have my awesome chiropractor, Dr. Vanessa, who she looks after me structurally every week. And then I have my amazing chiropractor, Dr. Dr. Trees, who actually looks after my biogeometric integration, which again, that's a conversation for another time. I actually get Dr. T on the mic to be able to discuss this. I have these 2 amazing humans that look after my structure and my innate ability for my innate intelligence to flow. Why is that important? Because they're actually 2 techniques that I utilize myself, and I love walking my talk, is that I look after myself in the same way that I suggest my clients are looking after themselves. I get soft tissue work with amazing massage therapists once a fortnight to make sure that I'm releasing the muscular tension that's actually built up through the work that I do and through life. As you've heard me talk about before, I am a recovering stress head. So if I'm not looking after myself in those ways, is I see the physical impact of that really quickly. I'm part of an amazing group that my dear friend Pauline Wen runs, and that we have weekly activations, which is activating dormant DNA within my system so that I can actually continue to expand, evolve, and elevate, and continue to learn and push myself and my system to a more expansive state, so that hopefully I get to share more amazing information with you guys and have bigger impact in the work that I love to do. What else do I do? I'm part of another practice management group that I'm on weekly calls to create rhythm and consistency within my business practices. Because I've got an awesome interview with Tristan Bond, who actually runs the group. He'll be coming up on the Aligned and Thriving interview series and talking about the importance of accountability when it comes to our business life. Because I love being a practitioner, but if I have a shithouse business that's running behind it, it makes it very hard for me to be focused on being an amazing healer and practitioner and chiropractor and speaker and facilitator and podcaster if I'm struggling to keep the lights on. So I actually have that as being part of my rhythm and consistency. Now, as I said, what I'm talking about for some of you that are listening is not the right thing for you, but it gives you an idea about how much thought that I put into my own rhythm and consistency, and any of the clients that I'm working with on a one-to-one basis is actually starting to create that structure within their life as well. Because for me and my alignment through all the work that I do, and also through my life design, is exactly that, creating alignment. Because the more aligned we are, the easier it is to come back into a homeostatic state, which actually then means the easier it is for us to perform at our best. And I think one of the things that I've found most frustrating over the last 9 months is that my body and my system has been giving me a royal middle finger of just letting me know who's boss, and that it's actually something that I need to be able to accept where things are at, so that I can start making improvements, versus actually being really frustrated in it, is to keep doing things that create better alignment within my system so I can start performing at my best again. Bit like jumping back on the mic. As I've shared with you before, I think I've said it every episode that I've been back on the mic for as yet. I think that was a full sentence. Was a part of why I thought it was so important to jump back on the mic was that, yes, I absolutely have some really important stuff to share with you, but also from a selfish point of view, it actually keeps my creative juices flowing. And I've set the hard deck, a bit like from Maverick, if any of you are Top Gun fans, is there's a hard deck of the base minimum non-negotiables for me is that there is a weekly drop of Aligned You, so that it actually keeps my brain working in a way that actually serves me. I hope that makes sense. So your homework this week, Aligned You listeners, is check in. Where are you actually creating excuses where perhaps you need to actually take some action? And where do you need to give yourself some grace? Because I find for a lot of people, particularly those that are high achievers and that like getting a lot of stuff done, is that they're really hard on themselves when they don't quite get to the end target. And as well, that should be my quote of this week. What's really important is actually the journey to get there and the lessons along the way, because those lessons will actually create clues of success that you then can implement and take your life design to a new level. Before I go this week, Aligned You listeners, my top 5. The song on high rotation right now is Let It Go from Frozen. The reason why it is on high rotation, which I'll talk more to, actually no, we'll be recording before that next week. Over the next few weeks, you'll hear about it. Actually, as part of the Spiritual Entrepreneur Network that I'm a part of, we've got a special dinner on at one of my favourite restaurants, Red Lantern, which is Pauline Wen's restaurant in Darlinghurst in Sydney. There's going to be a restaurant full of people, and there is a talent quest that I was hell-bent against not doing for quite a long time. I have added up and I'm in, and Ames and I are doing a rendition of Let It Go from Frozen. I'm making a comeback after having not really picked up a guitar properly since I was in my early teens. Is that I got a guitar given to me by my mum for my 40th birthday, because I'd said to mum, I think I might actually take guitar up again. And so she got me a beautiful guitar, which I haven't really played since my 40th. So that was 6 years ago. But a bit like how long it takes me to use certain pieces of equipment, I have a feeling it's reignited something inside me in terms of playing the guitar again. So Let It Go from Frozen is on high rotation as we are practicing for this talent quest that is coming up. More about pushing out of our comfort zones perhaps in a future episode. What have I watched this week? Lupin on Netflix has come out. It's the latest series of that. I seem to remember enjoying the first series a lot more, but now I'm into it. I need to finish it off. What did I do to de-stress and decompress over the last week? I had a movie afternoon, or really it was a TV afternoon, watching Lupin on Sunday. In the beautiful space behind me is that I actually hosted a biogeometric integration weekend here at MRC over the weekend. There were 16 chiropractors that had flown in from around Australia to learn for the whole weekend. Dr. T was running that particular course, and it was a huge weekend. And whilst that wasn't stressful, it was tiring, and our bodies go through a lot through these particular workshops. So to de-stress and align, I just had a really chilled afternoon resting in readiness for the week ahead. Quote of this week, it's a Ralph Waldo Emerson quote, which is, "It's not the destination, it's a journey." And that leads me to my final thought, aligned you listeners. In this journey of life, as we're building consistency and rhythm, is I think it's so important to, I've said it a few times today, understand the moments where you need to give yourself some grace and congratulate yourselves for the big and the little wins. And there's also times where you need to call yourself out if you're making excuses and you need to get off your butt and start doing. And if you take nothing else away from today's episode, if you take away the awareness of actually having an awareness that there's a difference between them, and that in times where you do need to give yourself grace, be gentle and do celebrate the wins. But if you take making excuses of yourself, give yourself a swift uppercut and get on with it so that you can be aligned and you can be performing at your best in your own unique way. Well, that's it for this week, Aligned You listeners. Bye for now, and I'll catch you next time. And that's it for today's episode, Aligned You listeners. Remember to hit the 5-star ratings and share today's episode with your friends. And be sure to join our collective on Facebook and Instagram at Aligned You. Look forward to catching you next time. The information shared on Aligned You podcast is of general nature and for information purposes only. It is not specific medical or personal advice. You should seek assistance from your healthcare practitioner for your individual circumstances. Any information provided doesn't imply endorsement or third-party devices or products and cannot provide you with health and medical advice.